Just want to welcome everyone to the Data Science Hangout. I know most of you have been here before, but if this is your first time, it's a open space for current and aspiring data science leaders to just connect and chat about some of the more human-centric questions around data science leadership. We really want to create a space where everybody can participate and want to hear from everyone. So there's 3 ways that you can ask questions. You can jump in live. I can pass you the fake microphone and put questions in the chat. And then we also have a Slido link where you could ask anonymous questions too. And Rob will help me by sharing that in the chat window right now. But this will be recorded and shared up to YouTube as well for anybody that missed it today. So just want to make sure I let everybody know that. Zoom should tell you that when you're joining as well. But I'm so excited to be joined by my co-host for today and friend on LinkedIn. I know we haven't met yet in person, but I'd like to introduce you to Edgar Gallo, Chief Data Officer at Daimler Trucks North America. Edgar, could I turn it over to you to have you introduce yourself and some of the work that you do on your team?
Thank you very much. Yes, absolutely. Very excited to be here. I've been attending for a few weeks now and months, I can say. Super interesting topics. I hope I meet the caliber of the other co-hosts you have had. Big shoes to fill here, but I've over the time I've learned people are very welcoming and warm. So my background, I've been with our company for almost 15 years now. I started with them in finance and controlling in a very quantitative-like role. From there, I moved into a role where we a team we have in our company is kind of unique in that it is an internal consulting team. And what we do is we focus on process improvement, process reengineering, load balancing, things of that nature. And back when I joined, we had the 2 areas of focus together. One of them was our area in manufacturing and our area on the non-assembly space, if you will, processes like accounting and hiring, things of that nature. And it was in that, let's say, play space where I did a lot of the analytics that were not so much driven by my interest, but the interest of others, which it was really, really key for me to understand and really tag along into what back in the day with the background in econometrics and stats, I was able to recognize as data science. So I run a team of very curious and inquisitive people that were split between the East Coast and the West Coast. We run projects all over the place, super fun. But something I learned over time is that the ability to measure not only their satisfaction with their work, as in, are we moving the needle or not with all the time we're spending in this analysis, but also the stakeholder satisfaction, right? Are they seeing a difference that is measurable? It was really closely connected to the ability to get data from the processes. And that's where I had the aha moment where we really needed to move into more data-centric focus. So I pitched it to my boss, he pitched it to their bosses, who pitched it to, there's always more bosses, but they all were receptive of the fact that we really weren't adding any more headcount. And we had spent about, I want to say, the better part of 3 months studying the need of the company, right? Doing this market research, internal, if you will, to where we had found a really nice gap that we could fit, and also a training, let's say, a training method. What do we need to get from really smart people to practicing data scientists? So those were the 2 outcomes of this 3-month-long process. And as a result of that, we started a team of data scientists that started working for the company. And as of November of last year, I moved into the chief data office role. Again, as I'm, doing the laundry with the data scientists, I realized a pattern, and that was that for the first or the early days of our, let's say, our existence, most of our projects were not so much data science projects, but data engineering projects, where's the data? How can we get it? How can we make sure it's reliable, trustable, things of that nature. So that really piqued my interest into the whole world of governance and access management and data management. And that's what I do now for Daimler Trucks in North America.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction, Edgar. And I know you just touched upon that training piece a little bit in building up that team. And I think that that was something we were talking about in a LinkedIn post maybe a few months ago. Um, but I think it'd be awesome to hear a little bit more about how you went through that process. And I know you mentioned like a buddy system before between new data scientists and existing ones, but would love to just dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was hiring for this team of consultants, I really didn't focus on a specific background. I more so have always focused on, I'm infamous for making up words. So I focus on team get alongness, right? So I try to get different personalities that will get the best out of each other when I put them to work together. So with that in mind, I ended up with people from accounting, people from engineering, people from really people with no with real life work education versus a specific degree or things of that nature. So we had a really diverse team in that sense, and I noticed that was very successful for the consulting piece. So when we started looking at the stacking up the data science piece, it was a little more challenging in that we have to have some rigor to the training, right? So when we were doing the research part of the pitch to set up the group, we went out and said, okay, what would it be that we needed to do from a quantitative side, but also from the soft skill side? And it really validated that we needed to continue having this introvert and extrovert balance, if you will, because the extroverts were really good at explaining to others the black box, and the introverts were really, really good at creating this black box. So that was kind of the beginning of setting up the buddy system. But then really the one of the let's say value propositions for the team to be created was how do we disseminate this in a company that it's trying and having really advanced engineering in some pockets where we're creating trucks that are, you know, now powered by electricity and batteries and renewables, trucks that can drive themselves. But on the other hand, how do we bring the rest of our company up in this layer of upskilling, right? So that portion was also a value prop element where we said, look, we're not only going to create training for ourselves, but we're going to find ways to disseminate this knowledge. So that was one of the pieces where we said, anytime we engage with a department in the business, we want to have a buddy system. We want to make sure that we start, we're the driver, and our clients are in the back seat. Eventually, they choose somebody that gets along with this and put them in the passenger side, so we can start creating more proliferation of the understanding of the business knowledge and how you apply the data science techniques, until eventually we swap and they are driving the project through and they see it to completion with our coaching.
I like that you're using the driving analogies there from Daimler. So for that, I'm waiting for a few questions to come in, so I want to just dive into this a little bit more. But for that training, what did that look like? Or did you use outside tools, or did you just identify a few like experts internally?
So just like I make up words, I'm super thrifty, and I'm always trying to have like the least resistance from the folks that have to approve anything I pitch, right? Super shoestring budget, right? So we looked at where most people were coming from, and this is specifically for those that were going to join the team. And most people have a certain content of playing along with Excel and, you know, do some data mining. So we focus on what most people know now. And then we focus on the actually the Coursera data science certification. So we took that as the backbone of our training. And then we just did this little spider chart to see how far people were away from it. And once we knew what were the primary targets of training, we looked at either partnering with, either partnering with Coursera or LinkedIn Learning or a couple of other places where we had some corporate licenses and affiliations. We ended up working with a company, I think, out of the UK. I'm blanking on their name. And they had really specific training for things we wanted to learn how to use, like Alteryx Designer, Alteryx Server, statistics, things along that nature. But they were all web consumed, and we managed to get a great deal through our indirect procurement team that did wonderful negotiation for us. And that was not only for us, but we were able to negotiate licenses for those that were joining us in projects from the business.
Great, thank you. I see a few questions coming in around some of the work that your team's doing, and I think it's also awesome to get this feedback on, or to understand like the kinds of problems that your team is solving. And one is, at Daimler Trucks North America, how do you approach service customer retention? So trucks going to their maintenance inspections from a data science perspective.
That's a very interesting point. I think we're trying two things, right? We're trying to evaluate, and this is kind of an interesting quandary because we make the trucks and our partner dealer base sells the trucks. So every dealer is their own business, right? We don't own all those dealers. It's like you hear about Ford this and Ford that, and they're all local businesses. So while you can suggest them best practices, you can't impose how they're going to conduct their business. So a lot of what we do is partner with them to develop technology, to develop best practices. Just like we have for internally, we have a team that goes out there and helps them with assessments and finds the opportunities. But then what we do with the technology piece is we're working on best methods to identify what's wrong with the truck ahead of time, for example, right? Predictive maintenance, things of that nature. So we have a team of data scientists that works under the big data group that is working on, developing these algorithms that can help any person that manages, thousands of trucks to know how to best choose a location for service, find out if that location has already the parts that are needed. We're even looking at some quite futuristic aspects of how can the truck broker this whole thing on its own without intervention from a human. And all of that is hinging on the right algorithms, the trust with the customer, the right data set, and the right data governance on. I wish I could share a lot more, but some of the things, are kind of edge on how we work and what will work. But in the whole thing is a dealer has bays, and they need to use these bays as rapidly as they can. So anything we can do to expedite what goes into the bay to be ready to be diagnosed 100%, and parts being there and get it out of the bay as soon as it can. It's no different than the pursuit of an F1 pit stop. Fast, fast, fast.
And just let us know if there's any questions that you can't answer too. But the next one that someone asked anonymously was, have you used data science for truck configurations, like the load,
it's
cabins,
a fascinating topic. It's a fascinating topic. I haven't, but I know that we are looking at how do we make that easier. The biggest challenge with our business is that we don't make trucks like cars are made, in that you have a black one and a blue one, and they change very little between one and the other. Really, trucks are completely different. Trucks are made from two frame rails, and then you start bolting cross members, and then you measure where you want your axles, and all of these measurements create very unique, very particular, specific trucks. And the one that follows it is not done because there's 100 of them that should be made the same. It's mostly a balancing of the factory and customer requirements and when they need it. So while we have tried that, and we are doing that, it's really it's really ultimately, in my opinion, it's really ultimately a balancing act between the art of building a truck and designing and speccing, which our partners have a huge deal of pride on building the truck for their customers that's sitting right there with them, and trying to make more kind of vanilla packaging of trucks. So it can be kind of it's a difficult thing to balance, I want to say. While you can have everything push automatically and just say, I want a blue, like I was playing earlier with a configuration for a Maverick. I don't know why, but I really want one. Even that, the permutations are small, and I could just only imagine what would it take me to build a truck that I could move the axles on based on formulas that we have to meet for example, bridge weight capacity differences in Massachusetts, in Oregon, in Washington. And if the truck's going to go across basically all states at any point in time, they ought to meet those. So it's kind of challenging to just say, hey, this size fits all. But there are some efforts on improving configuration in ease of use, and improving, of course, potentially profitability of a package versus another.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So maybe shifting gears just a little bit for a second here. I know you mentioned that you were at Daimler for maybe about 14 years. And I'd love to just hear maybe any advice that you have for growing within the organization, or getting from where you started to chief data officer, for people who are aspiring leaders on the call too.
It's a very interesting thing, because ever since I joined, I don't know if it was about surviving, right? I joined and then the Great Recession hits and everything was terrible around the world. So we survived, and we survived by being cohesive, by helping out beyond our need, right? I might have been in finance, but if a peer of mine needed help in purchasing or supply chain, or, we just did it. And then eventually we had a group of people come together into a cross-functional team where we were reassessing every single thing, from what is the impact of moving printers far away so people don't print, or print double-sided, everything we needed to do. So we really built a really strong community of purpose-driven people. And that really just kind of stuck with me. Like, if I continue doing purpose-driven work, I get exposed to more and more opportunities. Yes, it's more work. Yes, we have longer days. It requires some trade-offs, but in the end, you develop this street cred of go-to kind of people, and it just kind of follows you, right? So when I moved from finance to the internal consulting group, some peers were really happy, some managers were really happy, some others were, no, why are you moving? What did we do? Kind of thing, right? Eventually, everyone understands that you're moving to build up a career and get to know the business. But really, it was about what else can I do for you, sort of thing. In the balancing act between, well, now I'm a doormat, versus I'm a guy that can help but not do everything for you, right? That was, and those were some of my lessons learned, where you're like, wait a minute, I'm the only one left. Everybody left, and I was helping them, and now it's my job. So I fell a couple times, but learned quick, and kept doing that, and fine-tuning the balance between I can help you versus I'll do it for you. That was recognized by my now boss, the CIO, and I remember when he came first, about a year into it, he kept saying, when are you coming to IT? When are you coming to IT? And eventually, the role came out, and I thought, you know what? I could make a difference here on when it comes to the data management and the governance piece, and implementing our policy. So I took a swing and I got the job.
That's great. Thank you. And when you talk about that time where you were just answering all these questions and just kind of helping out any team, how did you kind of come up with what were the questions that people had from the business, or how did you collect those?
So I don't know, maybe it's the ESL thing, right? I always double check what I'm understanding. And I asked, do you mean this, or you mean that? Or instead of, I heard somebody say it the other really, really well, instead of just giving them what they're asking for, ask what they're trying to answer, right? Because sometimes they come to you and say, hey, can you give me the ROI on moving this supplier from here to there? And you can just give them that, or find out that more contextually, what are they pursuing? If they're pursuing an answer to either increase profitability or reduce costs, or just flat out make a decision for a purchasing agent, or things like that. So maybe just scratching a little bit past the surface and understand contextually.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I got that scary signal of internet unstable. So please let me know if anything happens. Tori, I see you just
Absolutely.
asked a question in the chat if you'd want to ask that live too.
Oh, sure. Hey, Edgar.
Hi.
I heard that you said that you report to the CIO.
Yes.
And I was interested in your thoughts about data being within IT versus I've seen a trend of taking the chief data officer and making it its own, like making that area its own that reports to the CEO. I was just curious what your thoughts are, where you think that's going, and how it's worked, the pros and cons.
I think, yes, I've seen the same, and it's an interesting path in that I think it's a spectrum of maturity, right? And I tell you, we're a very traditional business. We're an industrial. Our focus has been on making the best trucks, the most reliable trucks forever. We have an extremely smart group of engineers that can do calculations over and over and over. But I think we're finally getting into understanding that those calculations eventually, let's say, fill the bin, and they need to go somewhere. But they can't just go away, because our trucks last a long time. So we have a commitment to our customers. And when we're troubleshooting a truck that's 10, 15, 20 years old, those calculations matter. So now we're slowly creeping into the data management topic, right? Which forever has been in IT. But the cool thing about it is that my boss is not traditional IT CIO. He's a CIO that is proactive, let's say a business maker, if you will, in that he understands that for the longest time, the accumulation of data is a good thing if you know how to use it, or it's a bad thing if you don't know how to take care of it and curate it. So I would say at the moment, for the maturity spectrum and where we are as a company, it's working really well for us, because his understanding of IT is leading edge, I would say. So he's a really good broker of support with our board. Now, I know that as the board understands more and more about the risks and the benefits, then we talk about ransomware and the risks, and information security and information access management. And then we have more and more, let's say, regulations and right to repair and CCPA and you name it, right? Those topics are taking kind of a space of their own, and that's where, with the CIO's support on it, the board realizes more and more that the CDO it's an important role, in that somebody's got to be doing traffic control beyond the business that we traditionally support, beyond the design, beyond the improvement, beyond the innovation on the product. So I don't know if I see a future for us in which the CDO would report directly to the CEO, but definitely I see a much more ingrained and deeply rooted relationship. And I hope that answered your questions. I kind of went on and on.
Yeah, that was really interesting. One other question I have. Oh, you have other questions. Well, I'll ask this, and if you have time. I've seen also, it's been interesting, not everybody understands data science and data, and the structure of what do you think of, like the CDO? Is the CDO in that office over everything data, including data governance and modeling, and like it's a big area, and it's explosive. So how do you handle a good structure to allow that stuff to work cohesively?
So I think most people give answers related to how many people you have, what type of people you have. The people topic is incredibly challenging right now. So I was very fortunate to hire real good people, when I had postings, but I hear my peers over and over, losing people moving, this and that. So the best way to tackle this at the moment is just kind of being Johnny on the spot, whether it's a formal conversation or it's an informal conversation, right? I remember we were working on onboarding a team of external providers, and they were deploying this software. And I was just there because somebody thought, oh, maybe, Knucklehead needs to be here, so add him to the meeting. So they start pitching all this stuff about AI and this and that and the other. So I go, hey, for instance, I love your AI approach, and I love that you say it's going to like flip it over and make it work, and it's going to be done by itself. But you're talking about an application that's really close to an NLP application, which is only as good as your dictionary. So how long is it going to take you to get the dictionary going? And then the meeting is really quiet. Like, why are you asking those questions? Well, because I have the background. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm contributing. So that's exactly kind of, you make a name for the office, if you will, as to why do we need to bring them in. And then once you get that value spread out, if you will, of at least having you there, then people will start coming more and more at you for those topics, whether you have the formal or the moral responsibility over those topics. So it is by contributing with some understanding and knowledge.
Thank you, Edgar. And thanks, Tori, for jumping in too. I see, Trevor, you asked a question in the chat as well. Would you want to ask that one live?
Yeah, hi everyone. I think my questions are self-explanatory, but I'll go ahead. So I wanted to find out, Edgar, a little bit more about what's your data infrastructure like? I mean, so we're talking about databases. How is all of that architecture configured? And you mentioned, of course, that your team, that you got some training from Course Era and this group in London. I wanted to get a little background into what sort of training that was, and I mean the skill sets that you find most important on your team, even if they are soft skills and not necessarily data skills. And also just to find out if your data science team, is it centralized or is it distributed to, through different units or departments? It's a lot.
Super, yes. So maybe I'll start with the most fresh one, and then you correct me as we go backwards. So when we started the team with the data science group, it was part of this internal consulting group. So while it was centralized, it was serving the whole company. So it was deployed from our consulting group, but it was working with purchasing or with aftermarket controlling or with finance, all across the board. The key there was to work widely, because the purpose was also to elevate any place where we went to and bring about the knowledge and the tools and the thinking methods. So one back, I think you're talking about training. The training was very focused on the analytical tools we wanted to leverage, because again, with a shoestring budget, I didn't want to go pitch, oh, by the way, can I get this tool and that tool and that tool? There were other groups that were significantly ahead of us in that they found, tools like data mining tools or data aggregation tools that weren't really IT per se. I mean, we're not talking a full-blown Informatica solution. We're talking about something called Alteryx and Alteryx Designer, and it's really like SQL in steroids, where you just drag and drop, right? Just like you could do like a Shiny app. This thing helps you with that, in that it just kind of does the data mining result. So this specific online software training, it wasn't really just for Alteryx, but it had a bunch of other topics, really. and I'm blanking on the name right now, but there is, so my whole inspiration from this came from a company in the UK that back in 2014, 2015, basically took Tableau and some data mining tools and created a school. I think it's called the Data School. Maybe, I'm doing an ad for them here, way back. And that was kind of the inspiration, is like, get the data, drop in, understand the business, get the data, make it stable, the data mining piece that is, and then the improvements should be made measurable via some sort of visualization tool. And not only because it's that piece of satisfaction we're looking at, and for the stakeholder satisfaction as well, but in that they continue to improve their processes after we're gone. So they continue to measure the improvement and see where they can tweak more for the benefit. So that was really kind of a foundation inspiration for us to what do we need to be learning. So this software solution vendor in the UK was a good choice for that. Super variety of topics, but with an accountability system that you had to take a little quiz, a little test every so often. Your manager would know about it. They would, keep track of what you're doing and the speed of your progress, things of that nature. Because the training also, it needs to have some sort of, floor to it. Otherwise, we just hang out, which I tend to do. Architecture-wise, we are a 75-year-old company, so you can choose the name and we have it. It was our old IT adage in that business had the budget, came to IT, asked us to get something done, and we would just get it based on what the business wanted for that specific area, not so much holistically. So now with our new CIO, it's more of a holistic view. What do we need to keep that serves every single function, and what can we consolidate? So now the pursuit is that. So not that it's simplifying, because as we add off-prem cloud solutions, architecture gets more complex. And I admit I forgot the very first one before architecture.
So that was it. That was it.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay,
Not bad.
thank you. All right.
Thank you, Trevor. Just a follow-up question, because it was an anonymous one on Slido too, was if your team uses Python, R, or Julia, and how do you deploy data science solutions?
So when I was working with the team, I was also in the middle of getting a master's in data analytics. And this was an interesting combination between the School of Statistics at the university and the College of Engineering. So they both combined classes. So the College of Engineers, teaching everything on Python and all the ML and AI applications. But the School of Statistics was more about hypotheses and prove it and replicate it and redo it. So I was one foot in both, and for that reason, I was very open to the team using either. So I had a team member that was really good with our markdowns and his presentations, and he was really good at conveying that to the senior leaders hiring us to work for them. And another one that was just very comfortable with Python and doing some NLP applications for our HR team, for example. So we've used both. Not Julia.
Thank you. Manu, I see you asked a question in the chat earlier as well. Do you want to jump in and add a little more context on that one too?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I wanted to ask Edgar, do you have a data science approach for the after sales area, for the P&A area parts? Have you applied like basket analysis? Have you seen patterns in parts like collision, repair, or maintenance parts? That's my question. Thank you.
Great question. I can tell you have some business context. So yes, we have, like I was saying earlier, now IT has the Center of Excellence that has the big data group, and they have deployed some of their scientists across the aftermarket. And we have some very interesting applications in part replenishment, inventory volumes. I can't really share the crown jewels deeply, but we apply to replenishment, apply to optimization of inventory levels, apply to timing of changeover. Basically, a changeover for us means we have finished the design of either a product or a vehicle or an option on the vehicle, and we tested it, and it passes all of our testing. And then we communicate to our supply base that we need some inventory from their side because we're going to make this now available for purchase. And that's the changeover point, right? Where we say it's no longer internal. Now it becomes an outside looking option or product. So it's time to change it over. So on that timing, we've also deployed some interesting data science applications to improve with the volume, right? Instead of saying, hey, get 100 of this, we're saying, well, based on our data science approach, you need twice that, but in 2 different locations versus just the one. With our footprint of PDCs, power distribution centers, we are having some interesting applications of that as well. And some of the products that we warranty as an aftermarket product as well. So yes, it's all over the place.
Great. Thank you very much.
I see a great question that just came in the Slido as well. And I'll just read it to you. It says, your work encompasses both low code and code first communities. Any ideas about how to build and encourage mutual respect between those 2 groups?
Oof. I think the first is trust, and trust in that first one, I would say that I was in the business and I moved to the other side the other side, IT. Before I moved, we were working on low code using OutSystems. And it was really, I was part of a bunch of different, very stressful meetings. But the last few, mostly as an observer, and where I was able to pick up that our IT counterparts were really stressed about something, but we were not picking up on it. And their stress was more about, hey, you guys, you really haven't seen the full picture on the other side. Hey, you guys, we haven't really made a good effort on showing you what it looks like. But when you put something out there and you go from your development and you pass your QA and you put it in production, it's on us. And we want to know how much of your low code application are you willing to support Saturdays and Sundays versus how much is on us. And then we just start kind of like peeling the onion and understanding really what was driving their stressors, right? The guys that are working on full-blown development piece, they know all those pitfalls and they know they're going to be on call and they know they don't have the luxuries of the analytics teams that just, go off on the weekends as well with all their stakeholders and come back and deal with issues on Monday. So there was a lot of discovery and empathy built, seeking to learn what we didn't know. So from low code, you're moving boxes here and there, deploying, yeah, you made something faster, automatic, and you get a pat on the back. But that requires a server. That requires information classification. That requires security around it. That requires a bunch of stuff from the infrastructure side and the software versioning side. And a few of the things that we really didn't know about. And not because we didn't want to, but just because we didn't really have the foresight to ask, what's driving your stress? What am I doing that's stressing you? So the moment we started doing that, we started building bridges and trust and taking advice better. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. What do you think were like the first initial questions that led the team to say like, okay, now it's time to build a data science team, or business problems they wanted to solve?
We identify things like, say we're looking at improving a process between 2 key stakeholders in the company. And the stakeholder that hired us had more data, and the data was 100% pointing at the other stakeholder being at fault, right? So we started going after, well, why can I have more of this data? Why can I do my own measurements? Can I get more of this? Can I get more of that? And having that unilateral data push on you to make things happen, it was really what the driver was. How do we do this? How can we take really a data-driven approach and not so much a which stakeholder is more prepared approach? And those were some of the kind of, I would say, failure modes, right? When you're trying to help the company, but only one stakeholder is benefiting from your process improvement, from your analytics, it really makes no sense when you think as a system, right? As a system, the imbalance can come from either side, not just from the side with data. So that really drove us to think, how do we create a team that can do this data-based decision making?
And what does your data science team look like today? Is it made up of, or I guess, how many data scientists versus data analysts?
So my data science team, I think all but one have turned over into the business. Actually, one of them moved to a different area of Daimler, into Mercedes-Benz cars. So it's kind of all in the family. But what happened is, as a result of that, we had really deep and long conversations with HR. We had really deep and long conversations with other areas of the business, and they understood what they were looking for. So job descriptions got better. The proliferation of like copy paste of the skill sets that we were hiring for, I see them now everywhere. So now we have data scientists in the aftermarket side, in the marketing side, in finance for sure. And they might not be labeling themselves as data scientists, but the practices and the conversations we have when we get the data community together are very much of those that have the same literacy and skill level. So now I can say we have them everywhere. They just look a little different.
How do you get the data science community together? Like, do you have some internal group?
We do, COVID ruined a few things. Among those, what we used to do every year, we call it DTNA, that's the acronym for the company, DTNA Data Day. And purposely, it's never been a day, it's always been 2 days. And everyone's thrown off because they're highly quantitative, and they're like, it's data day, but it's 2 days. And then that's the conversation started. But we used to get everyone together, and my team was, the driver of it, and we would get speakers, but then we would be all over the company connected with people and finding what is something that you want to tackle. What you want a working session, you want to proliferate knowledge in your area, you want to, what can we do to assemble interesting topics? So we would do that. Nowadays, with one of my responsibilities being the corporate data catalog, we hinge a lot on our data stewards community. I have a couple of things I believe in like having the latest and greatest version of our software, deploying benefits and improvements and things like that. So those are drivers for me to keep the community alive and growing and using the data catalog as we aspire it to be. So that's another forum where we get not only the data scientists, but the data thirsty, let's say.
And what is the data catalog again?
It's the brand. I don't know if I should say the brand or not, but imagine that you have gazillion databases and schemas and all this stuff, right? So when you're trying to deploy your RStudio into a database with the ODBC, you kind of want to know what's in it. And instead of just going in there and trying to read all these columns and get samples of all this data, you can go to the catalog. And the catalog is a mix between, maybe I'm dating myself, but the Yellow Pages and Yelp, right? It's structured, it's organized, it has content, but it also has recommendations, because over time, as data gets copied or federated or what have you, for your use case, you might be looking for a specific transformation of the data. And if it's yelped out, you know that it's being used for a prior case, or you can look at queries that have been used to create a report for XYZ. And that's the community piece of the data catalog.
I just want to make sure I'm not missing questions that people are asking, because I'm getting to ask a lot of mine. But so feel free to speak up live too. But I'm curious to ask the audience too. I love that idea of the data day or 2 data days. I was wondering if other companies are doing that too, or if you have something similar. I'm sure COVID messes up some of this, but. Or you can put it in the chat too. Oh, it sounds, Frank said Target does. I know
Right on.
Our studio went to a conference one time at Disney, and they had like a whole like Disney data conference for their internal teams. So I wonder if that's something that's happening at more and more companies now.
Yeah, so we've had people from Intel, from universities, to speak with us. The last one, I was just kind of getting the conversations going with the CEO of Torque. It's an autonomous software building company, and it just COVID happened. But we always try to have this kind of leading edge, interesting topic, right? The very first one was with Intel, and we were talking about edge computing, and kind of we had a transformation going in all of our manufacturing sites. So it's always kind of nice and cohesive.
Thank you. I see another question that just came in was, I've seen in your profile that you are a lean process manager. Just a curious question, how does lean integrate with data science?
It's very interesting because from lean and Six Sigma, it was about what's being, first of all, is a process the best way it needs to be, and lean, you're always in recovery afterwards, because you think about data flows and transformations and the stages of data. So if your data is not reliable, your analysis might have lots of holes in it, right? So that's kind of, I think, the first leap of faith between data and data science. And when I was coaching some of these teams, I'll give you an example. We were working in one of our manufacturing sites, and we were working on a question of interest, material handling and receiving, and it was like a lean driven approach, right? Are we doing the right things for the right size? But then we went into the quantitative piece of it, and everything was kind of out of whack. It just didn't look like anything, right? So I was telling the team, why don't you look at the data acquisition piece, right? We have 3 shifts, and turns out that some of the people in one shift were using, 4 or 5 out of a 12 shortage reason codes. And then along comes the second shift, and it's always the most stressful one time-wise. So they were dumping everything into one. And then the third shift was like, sometimes we're like, well, we'll just leave it to first shift to do it, right? So you were supposed to be capturing the data of the reason codes of why you're having shortages in 12 different categories, in 3 different moments in time, and they were totally uneven. They weren't really driving the learning we needed, right? So that's where lean behavior leaps into the data quality, which leads into the data science analysis possibility without the data being skewed already by acquisition.
Can I ask you, if I'm just imagining if I was a new data science leader joining the call, what is some advice that you'd give to someone who's maybe like just made that move into a leadership role and is just starting to build out their team?
I would say challenge yourself to be as smart and clever as your team is. People are asking me, you already have a master's, why you want another master's? And this and that. I'm trying to do this very smart thing and attract very smart people, to create a team. And if I don't understand and I don't expand my mental model, I can't meet them at the same spot, right? So being intellectually curious, and not that you have to know more because you're the boss, but it's so that they find your pursuit and they find that their knowledge is valued to the point where you don't mind spending a couple nights a week learning more and understanding more and having much more depth in the conversations. It's not easy. And I remember I did this to my own boss, where I said, look, we're going to start working on this project. I'm going to come out and tell you it's going to take me 2 months. I said, and you're going to say, great. And I'm going to go away laughing and say, hey, I have no idea what I'm talking about. And he's like, really? Would you do that? I said, well, it's not me, but you're going to have more people working with this team, eventually different leaders. So at the end of the day, he ended up joining me and taking a Python class with me. And we did homework together and we challenged each other. But he was understanding that in this new, this new era of data currency, really the throughput conversations we had nothing to do with just pure effort, right? There's so many more variables that go through it. And he was humble and wise enough at the same time to pick that up and turn out to a great role model for me, for people in his peer group.
Awesome. Frank, I see you unmuted. I didn't want to start talking if you were about to ask something.
Took 52 minutes, but I think I'm ready. Edgar, you had talked about recording defects. Have you or your group tried to do any kind of automated root cause analysis, which from my observations has been one of the more really challenging I don't even know if it's data science tasks that is very operational still. And it's hard. And I'm just kind of curious if you guys have taken on any of those challenges. And if so, I don't know, you got any advice?
We didn't really get to it in the wild. We do have Six Sigma folks at every factory, but we don't have the telemetry we're required to just deploy those variable measurements steadily, if you will. It would require really a heavy load on that. We are making our factories much more modern to where now, let's say a torque gun is speaking to us and it's letting us know when it's in and without range or out of range. And we have now built-in standard procedures to capture that, and the operator will do the tweaking. But it's going to take much more footprint for us to get there and have that automatically built into IoT.
Let me know if you agree here, but a lot of data science and what people think of data science is born and raised in technology companies, right? All the Silicon Valley companies, and operations and supply chain is still catching up, right? Like we're getting there, but we need that foundation first, right? Like we need the smart factories to have data to do more of the data science model building, pattern recognition.
Yeah, and you should see me. I wish I could share much more about it, but imagine not only the signal, but also getting into, well, this is a time series type of signal. And do people get it? Do people not get it? Is your cloud ready for it? And are you getting the signals of the event before or after or during the continuum? And is it getting a super expensive stack? And absolutely, I think the topic should be driven about the footprint, right, of the connected factory or the connected truck. And I very frequently ask much brighter people than myself, and they talk about the connected truck. I say, from 0 to 100, how connected is the truck or the vehicle for that matter, right? Is it 100%? Like, can I tell the wear and tear on the hinges as I open the door and close it? Or can I tell, the damage to the lock mechanism because somebody slammed the door? Mm. Or what happens to my harnesses connected, right? Are they just more chafing out of movement, or what's going on? It really is not as deep as we think it is when it comes to connected anything.
That's just the truck itself. How about the network that the truck is in?
Right? Is it bouncing? Is it the signal is with the fidelity? Is it going to the data acquisition? Does it need transformation? How much transformation? And is the transformation automatic? Yeah, it's a beautiful challenge, but the torque gun is a good example where the thing talks to yourself and it's in real time. And it's the best case when your own operator knows that that's happening, right? It's like driving and hearing a noise, you should pull over.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Edgar.
Thank
Absolutely,
you, Edgar.
Frank.
I see, Trevor, you just asked one other question. Do you still code and build models, Edgar?
For fun, but mostly at the level where I can brag to my children.
Love it.
I have an 11-year-old girl that I want to inspire into STEM, and a 7-year-old boy that I also would like to have inspiring to STEM. So we'll see.
Awesome.
They have the final word.
How do you go about inspiring them?
By showing them that it's hard work, but by also showing them all the rewards that come with it. Not in a braggadocious way, but in the joy that I have doing the job I do.
That's great. Manu, I see you just asked a question around diversity. Do you want to jump in, or you want me to read that?
Sure. I guess Mr. Gallo speaks Spanish. I think he's from Mexico.
Sí, claro.
Qué bueno. Saludos. I'm sorry for speaking Spanish right now, but I want to ask a question about how do you approach diversity in a data science team?
Well, diversity is a very interesting topic because it has so many lenses and dimensions to it. So for me, I still remember one of the first people that I hired. We had an exercise with our HR team, and they do the personality profile, and we use DISC. So I am a D and a high I, and he is an S and a C. So he asked me, he's looking at me, I was like, why did you hire me? I go, exactly, for that reason. He's like, and it took a moment to go, oh, it's the balancing thing, right? So that's exactly what it is for me. It's all about balancing and balancing of perspectives, of upbringing, of, age and gender and style and approach to life, basically, because data science is curiosity, and data science could be biased or not biased, right? So when I'm assuming a certain condition to an analysis, somebody else with totally different background will come up from nowhere and say, wait, it doesn't happen like that in the US. Maybe in Mexico it does, but here's totally different. And that's kind of the trick for me to not only pursue the diversity in the team, but also almost make it a non-negotiable, right? If you have just right-handed people, you're going to do just right-handed people stuff.
As a bit of a follow-up there, how do you focus on diversity when hiring, and how do you make that a part of the hiring process?
So now we have a kind of a newer process where you don't get to see anything but answers to the attributes you're looking for. So you have no idea if this individual is from Mars or from the ocean. You just know that they're alive and they breathe air and they are interested on your job. And that's how you go about really seeking what is the best skill set combination that you want. It's now rolled out with our HR business partners, and my opinion is working well because it really takes everything out of the first impression sort of thing, for me at least, because if you really just dive into the fun of the work, the technical topics, what you've done before, why are you pursuing this here now? So that's kind of with help, if you will, but it's been working well for me.
Awesome. Edgar, I know we're getting to the top of the hour here, so I just want to ask if anybody has follow-up questions or wants to connect with you, is the best way through LinkedIn?
Yes, absolutely. I'm a little slow on that, got a lot on the plate, but don't think I'm ghosting anyone. It's just a little slow.
Rob, do you want to, if you want to share Edgar's or Tyler, Edgar's LinkedIn in the chat, that would be awesome. And one last question for you then. I'm trying to go through all the recordings and keep a list of these too that I'll share with everyone. But are there certain books or podcasts that you'd recommend that some of us check out?
Wow. Yes, but nothing maybe data sciencey. The one I'm super hooked on right now is Darknet Diaries. Totally has everything to do with my current gig and understanding what our information security officers do, and it's super fun.
I'll have to check it out. Well, thank you so much, Edgar, for joining us and sharing your insights with everyone. Really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Super happy to do it. And thank you everyone for your questions, and looking forward to seeing you all again.
Thank you all so much for joining. And if anybody has feedback or suggestions for future sessions too, I did just put a anonymous Google form in there as well. But would love to see you all next week, same time, same place. Have a great rest of the day.